Hi, this video is about margin of error. So now that we have figured out what the standard error is, that's part of our confidence interval formula. And then the margin of error, let me actually go to this formula again. So this part right here is the standard error. And then the whole plus or minus part, that's the margin of error. So ME for margin of error, SE for standard error. So what we need to do with the margin of error is multiply our standard error by our Z value. So that's saying how many standard deviations are we going to go out, and then we're multiplying it by the standard deviation, or our estimate of the standard deviation. Okay, so again, this is just part, it might look like there's a lot of different formulas, but they're all just part of the same formula. If you have this one formula, you've got the standard error, margin of error, and you can get your whole confidence interval. Okay, so let's go, in this box, I just have that part of the formula. So it's the plus or minus part. The margin of error is like the plus or minus 2.7 that they had on the website, or we calculated it to be 2.3. This is an estimate that expresses the amount of sampling error, or I like to call sampling variation, because not every sample is going to say the same thing. So you get some normal sampling variation when you do a survey. When you see something like plus or minus 3 percentage points, that's the margin of error. So it's the number of standard deviations you're going out based on your confidence level times the estimate for the standard deviation. So that's a way of putting it in terms of standard error, and here I plugged in the formula for standard error right here. Okay, so continuing the previous example, calculate the margin of error at the 95% confidence level. So let's do our margin of error. That is going to be plus or minus. We need our Z star, which I wrote in this box. For 95% confidence is 1.96. Plus or minus 1.96 times, we actually calculated our standard error in the previous example, but I'm just going to do it again so we can practice doing the formula. 0.60 times 0.40 times divided by our n, which is 2,000. So this will be plus or minus, let's put this in the calculator, 1.96 times the square root of 0.6 times 0.4 divided by 2,000. 0.0215 if I round that, 0.0215. Okay, so plus or minus about 2%. Now we can do our confidence interval because we have our p hat plus or minus all this, right? So p hat plus or minus the margin of error. So we had 0.60, that was our sample proportion, plus or minus 0.0215. Okay, so we're going to subtract first to get the smaller one, and then we're going to add to get the bigger end point. Let's get this up. 0.60 minus 0.0215 is 0.5785. And 0.60 plus 0.0215, 0.6215. So that is our confidence interval. Now in the future, in general, you can go right to this whole formula. And that's why I showed that to you at the beginning. But I also wanted to kind of build you up through the pieces so you could understand the different parts of the formula, the standard error and the margin of error and how they all fit together. So that's why we kind of did this example in parts. Okay, so now the interpretation part. What is this? What do these numbers mean? So to interpret it, we always use a sentence or a statement, kind of like this. We are blank % confident that the true proportion of blank is between blank and blank, or blank % and blank %. So we are 95% confident because we used the 95% level to get this z-value of 1.96. And this is where you put in your context. Insert context here. So we're 95% confident that the true proportion, which is what we're trying to estimate, of, what was it? Hiring managers who use social media parentheses around that, who use social media to research job applicants is between, let's say, 57.9% and 62.2%. I'm cutting off a digit just to make it a little more understandable. 57.9% and 62.2%. Or you could round this to 58% and 62%. Okay, so that's the interpretation of our confidence interval. Next, we'll be talking a little bit more about interpreting these confidence intervals. So I'll see you in the next video.